I'm very excited to introduce and welcome our guest today, Professor Valerie Schultz. Am I correct? It's a little bit, it was
perfect.
Perfect. Okay. From Florida State University. She is the author of 180 publications, 8,500 citations, and her special book, Skills Assessment Measuring and Supporting Learning in Video Games. Okay, Professor Schultz, we are very grateful to you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We are looking forward to learning from you. Thank you so much. That's enough for me. I'm waiting for you.
Salam be hamadi.
That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Salam be hamagi.
Val, before you start, I think Ehsan has something to say in Farsi to everyone, and then I have a 2-minute introduction for you before you start, if that is okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Ehsan, go ahead.
Thank you.
My introduction is not enough.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor. Yes, that's great. That's great. But we want you still here and be with us, Dr. نوروزی. سلام عرض می‌کنم خدمت همگی شرکت کنندگان عزیز. خیلی خوش آمد میگم خدمتتون به دومین در حقیقت وبیناری که در این فصل، یعنی از آذر ماه تا الان برگزار شده. من خیلی سریع چند نکته خدمتتون بگم. یکی این که این وبینار همونطور که می‌دونید زبان انگلیسی به اصطلاح اجرا میشه، ولی زیرنویس رو اون پایین داریم. الان چون من دارم صحبت میکنم زیرنویس اشتباهه، ولی زیرنویس زنده اون پایین هستش. پرسش و پاسخ انشالله انتهای صحبت پرسش و پاسخ داریم که اگر که انگلیسی بخوایم بپرسین امکانش هست، انگلیسی بنویسین امکانش هست. اگر هم نه فارسی هم خواستین فارسی رو بپرسین، آقای دکتر رحیمی به اصطلاح ترجمه میکنن و از خانم دکتر میپرسن. ما به خاطر اینکه بتونیم در حین صحبت تمرکزمون روی صحبت باشه، با عرض پوزش فراوان به اصطلاح اسپیکر و چت رو میبندیم در حین صحبت، ولی ویدیو بازه و خوشحال میشیم اصلا همه بتونن تصویر بدن. شکر خدا مشکل زوم الان این نیستش که تصویر وقت سرعت رو کم میکنه، یعنی همه میتونن تصویر رو بدن و با تصویر همه کل وبینار رو داشته باشیم. من تشکر میخوام بکنم اول از آقای دکتر رحیمی بابت اینکه این هماهنگی رو انجام دادن و همچنین خود انجمن تکنولوژی آموزشی که این بستر و این حمایت رو انجام داد که این به اصطلاح وبینار صورت بگیره. در انتها بازم تشکر میکنم از خانم ها آقاپور و رشیدی که زحمت حمایت این دوره رو کشیدن. Okay. First of all, I'd like to welcome to Professor Schultz for his generosity and time for this webinar. And my warmest congratulations to Ahmed for his achievements, for his new achievements. He's our honor. And we in Iran, all of us, we are glad to hear his new achievement. And thank you from Dr. Norouzi for his speaking. Dr. Norouzi, if is there anything else we can hear it, and if not, I pass through Ahmed and want him to start.
Thank you, guys. I noticed that my chat is disabled. I wanted to respond to some people that are chatting here, but okay. My chat is disabled. Here.
I'm making you co-host, so you can, let me just, so you're now a co-host and you can share a screen and you can respond to chat. So
thank you.
I will make it short. So, hi everyone. Thank you IAET for your invitation. It's my honor to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's talk, Dr. Valerie Shute. Dr. Valerie Shute is a full professor of education at Florida State University. Before coming to FSU, she was a principal research scientist at Educational Testing Service, ETS. Many of you have heard about TOEFL and GRE tests, right? Her general research interests hover around the design, development, and evaluation of advanced systems to support learning, particularly related to 21st century competencies. Her current research involves using games with self-assessment to support learning of cognitive and non-cognitive knowledge, skills, and dispositions. As of today, according to the Google Scholar, her research resulted in about 266 publications, more than 15,000 citations, and an H index of 54. Simply put, she is a big deal. Last year, I was invited by Professor Christopher Dede to present what I did in the past 6 years in Dr. Schute's lab at Harvard Graduate School of Education. And he introduced me to his students like this. Ahmed is Dr. Schute's student, who is one of the top 3 scientists in the world in the area of diagnostic assessment. And I was purely proud. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome virtually Dr. Valerie Shute. Go ahead, you can start.
Again, shalom, everybody. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Hold on, let me find where I ended up sticking it. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, you can see my screen. So again, thank you guys for inviting me to come talk. It's my pleasure. I am a little distracted because today is a very big day in the United States. We are getting rid of one old bad president and we're getting a new one today. So these things are taking place right now. So I'm a little bit distracted because I'm real excited. So today I'm going to be talking about stealth assessment in games to measure and support learning of really important competencies. We've measured and supported things like persistence and creativity and systems thinking and stuff. Today I'm going to be focusing on physics because the game that we're going to be using is called Physics Playground. So the idea about stealth assessment is really pretty simple. And here's a flow chart right here. So it starts with gameplay. So a kid or a person is sitting down and playing a game, and they're producing all sorts of performance data, which are captured in a log file and then analyzed automatically by the stealth assessment machinery. And then the results are output to the student model, which then updates in real time and at various grain sizes, all sorts of different levels of student competencies. And then that provides the information, the basis for providing feedback and other kinds of support to the learner, who continues to play the game and produce more data and so forth. So this is the underlying flow chart that goes into the stealth assessment model. And so you may wonder, well, why use games as an assessment device? Well, first of all, good games are very engaging. I don't know how many of you play video games. I do. They're very engaging, and they require somebody who's playing them to actually apply all the different kinds of knowledge and skills in the process of gameplay in order to succeed in the game. Things like, problem-solving skills. Another reason to use games as assessments is, besides being very engaging, they're also ubiquitous. In the United States, you know, almost 90% of the kids play some form of video game. So they're engaging and they're ubiquitous. Now, digital games differ on a lot of dimensions. They differ in terms of the genre and the content and the platform, but I contend that good games are a system, and they consist of these 6 different core elements. So these are good digital games we're talking about. The first is interactive problem solving, and this represents the interplay between a player and a game. So it's the back and forth between what the player does and what the game does. And it usually is in the context of some very interesting problem that they're trying to solve. Good games provide specific goals and rules, and this helps a player figure out what to do, when, and how. Good games provide adaptive challenges, and this means that that the difficulty level of a particular game is kind of targeted to the abilities of the player. And good games are right at kind of the outer edges of doability. And this represents what Vygotsky has called the zone of proximal development. Good games offer control to the player, which is really important, a sense of autonomy with regard to the gameplay and the learning experience and the environment. Number 5 is real important. Good games offer ongoing feedback, and we all know that this is crucially important for learning, you know, getting ongoing feedback. And finally, good games offer sensory stimuli. These are things like, you know, the graphics and the sounds and, you know, even the narrative that are used to excite the senses. So, sorry. When all of these elements come together, it makes for a very engaging environment, you know, where kids want to play and replay games and solve really hard levels because the reaching rewards, you know, getting to the final goal is, you know, super rewarding for a person. So now the question is, these are the characteristics of good games. How in the world can we incorporate stealth assessment into these games and not disrupt this engagement, this flow state? And that's where stealth assessment comes in. This is something that I've been working on. I first came up with the idea and talked about it in 2004 at AERA, and have been working on this ever since. But these are the main features of stealth assessment. The first is that it's intended to be seamless and ubiquitous. So by seamless, I mean that the assessment is buried, you know, right into the fabric of the gaming or the learning environment so that it's invisible. So learning and assessment become blurred. Ubiquitous means that it's running at any and all times. The second feature has to do with the stealth assessment being formative instead of summative. So that means instead of serving as judge and jury and giving a single score at the end of, you know, some test, it's intended to support learning. This is a good quote that I've used to distinguish between formative and summative assessment. When the cook tastes the soup, that's formative because you can go back and add some spices to it, some saffron or some salt or pepper. And when the guest tastes the soup, that's summative. And finally, stealth assessment is intended to provide accurate and very rich models of the learner. And this is made possible because I use something called evidence-centered design to create the models that are used in stealth assessment. So I'm not sure if anybody here other than Ahmed is familiar with evidence-centered design, but this is really important underpinning of stealth assessment. This is how you create the models that are used in stealth assessment. So I'm going to go through this slide a little bit slowly. So evidence-centered design, or ECD, has 2 main foci. The first is it provides a way to reason about assessment design. How do you create excellent assessments? And the second is it provides a way to reason about student performance, how students doing. So if you go from left to right, from competency to evidence to task model, it lets us accomplish really good assessments. So you start with the competency model, which addresses what all you want to say about the learner in terms of their knowledge, skills, dispositions, whatever. So it involves identifying and structuring the relevant variables of what it is that you're interested in teaching, supporting. Next is the evidence model, and this involves establishing a relationship associated between the theoretical variables and their associated metrics, how you're going to measure them. And finally, there's the task or action model, which allows you to define all the different features of the tasks that'll enable you to pull out the evidence that you need. So that's how you set up a good assessment. When you reverse the flow and go from right to left, this lets us accomplish diagnosis. So say a person is playing a game and they produce a series of actions in the game after solving a level or not solving the level. That's this little yellow box right here with all the shapes. That at the end of the level is sent to the evidence model, which immediately parses and scores those data. So these are scored data here in the little blue boxes. Those are measurable data. Those are things you can grab and quantify. So those scored data are then statistically linked back up to their associated theoretical variables. And this is kind of abstract right now, but it'll become clearer when I give some examples in Physics Playground. So then these theoretical variables are then reinserted back into the competency model, which is then updated in real time and at various grain sizes. So my stealth assessment idea uses evidence-centered design models that are working within the system, and this allows us to extract, ongoing information from a player, from a learner, and it allows us to make accurate inferences about the competencies, and then use that information, like I showed in the flow chart, to react in immediate and helpful ways. And this is all accomplished via the automated scoring that I'll give you some examples about, and also some machine-based reasoning techniques that we're using. And what we've been using historically for the last 10 years or so are what's called Bayesian inference networks, or BayesNets. So let me introduce you to the game. This is a game that when Ahmed started on the project several years ago, 5-6 years ago, it was only for PCs, and so he rewrote the whole game, bless his heart. And so this is very much a team project. I'll introduce you to the team, but Physics Playground is basically a 2D computer-based game involving simulations, physics simulations for gravity, mass, air resistance, Newton's laws of force and motion, and so forth. We've gotten a lot of funding from various organizations in the past 10 years, a couple of Gates grants, NSF grants, IES grants, and I'd like to introduce you to the team that's worked on that. I work with Russell Almond, who is my colleague at ETS, and I brought him down to FSU. Feng Kerr, Ryan Baker, Sydney DeMello. And then we always worked with some physicists as our experts on the team, our subject matter experts. And then many postdoc research assistants here. And you see your new title, Ahmed? and Ahmed. So, now there's hundreds of different levels that are present in the game. It's a very rich, deep game. It's very, very fun. Everybody from 6 years old to 95 loves to play the game. But among the hundreds of, oh, and we also, because we have a level editor built into the game, we can create levels ad infinitum. So we can create as many levels as we want. But the goal of every single level is the same. So you try to get a green ball over to hit a red balloon. And everything in the game obeys, the basic rules of physics, in terms of gravity and Newton's 3 laws of force and motion. We have 2 different types of levels that are present. One is sketching levels, and this is where players are actually drawing physical objects on the screen using their mouse or a stylus and colored markers. And these objects come to life when they're drawn. And in this example right here, you see that a player has drawn a pendulum here, and if the mass is sufficiently large, when it drops down, it'll hit this tetherball thing and knock it up to hit the balloon. So we have sketching levels, and we also have manipulation levels where players are actually changing physics parameters to solve levels. I'll show you an example of that in a second, but we have different sliders for things like change the mass or change the gravity or change the air resistance, and they can increase or decrease it. Like what happens if there's no gravity at all? Well, the ball will just sit where it is. So players can solve problems in many, many different ways, always striving for the most awesome way to do it. Okay, I think I turned the sound on, I'm not sure, but let me show you some what the game looks like. Oops, sorry. Can you hear it? The music?
Yes.
Here a person's drawing a pendulum. This is a hard level. You have to get everything right in that. Timing is real important. Here they're drawing a lever. Okay, here's an example of a manipulation level. Where to solve this problem, they have to change different things. So like here, they're changing the mass of the ball, making it really just right. Okay, so one of the things that we needed in the game was to have a big range of difficulties to suit everybody's different kinds of needs, right? So what we did was we came up with a number of difficulty indices, and here's 4 of them right here. So the first is, and this is for every single level. So the first is the relative location of the ball to the balloon. So if the balloon is above the ball, that makes it harder because you have to you have to create some kind of simple machine like a lever or a springboard or something to propel the ball up to hit the ball. So that was scored as 0 or 1. So if it was above the ball, it got a 1. If it wasn't, then it got a 0. We looked at the number of obstacles that were present in the pathway between the ball and the balloon. If there were a lot of obstacles, it made it harder. The distinct agents of force and motion, we called our simple machines agents of force and motion. So the more agents that it took to get a ball to the balloon, the more difficult. And the novelty of the problem, it was unlike other problems, it made it harder. If it was similar to other ones, it made it easier. So we we use the difficulty indices on each one of the levels in the game, and then we were able to see which levels are easy, medium, and hard, and then we arrayed them along a continuum and put them in different playgrounds, you know, super easies and so forth. So we also made a design decision for the game early on so that players could play any level that they wanted to, a non-linear version of the game, so that, you know, offering them some control of their environment. And turns out, you know, people would be, you know, going through the easier ones, then some people would get really confident and go over to a super hard one, and they would get their butts kicked and they'd have to come back to, you know, the easier ones. Here is an example of a pretty easy springboard level and a more difficult springboard level right here. So you can see the balloon is above the ball. That's a little bit difficult, but there's no obstacles in the way and so forth. So this is characterized as a kind of easy springboard problem. And you can see a person here has made a springboard, and they're adding a weight to it, and they're popping it up, and they're getting it to the green ball. And then this example over here, I speeded it up because it took the person a really long time to solve it. But here you see there's a lot of obstacles that are in the way. So person, oops, so a little too much force there, so they have to reduce the mass so it doesn't hit. Now they're hitting the hat, which is an obstacle. And now they got stuck, but the person is persisting. It's so much fun to watch kids' faces when they solve these levels. You know, they shout with joy. It's wonderful. So here is the very simple version of the physics that we want the game to be able to support kids' learning of. So we've got physics understanding as the parent node, and then we have issues of force and motion, linear momentum, energy and torque, and each one of those has different child nodes. So we have Newton's first law, second law, third law, properties of momentum, conservation of momentum, energy can transfer and energy can dissipate, properties of torque and static equilibrium. So we're focusing on these 9 different competencies at a more, you know, which is a more refined level. So for diagnostic purposes, maybe somebody is just medium in their physics understanding. We want to know what the problem is. You know, is it that you're not understanding energy issues or force issues? So I mentioned before that the core content in the game has to do with physics, and it's usually taught in terms of simple machines, again, which we call agents of force and motion. And these are the 4 main ones that we focus on. Ramp, everybody knows what a ramp is. This is used to change the direction of the motion of the ball. A lever, this rotates around a fixed point, which is a fulcrum. Pendulum, this directs an impulse to its direction of motion, and it's usually secured at the top by a pin, and a springboard, which stores elastic potential energy from a falling weight, and it becomes kinetic as the weight is released. So now the question is, we all, in the sketching levels, everybody draws something a little bit differently. So the way I may draw a pendulum may be different than Nuruzi, which may be different than Ahmed, and so forth. So we had to have a way for the computer, for the game to be able to figure out what the heck did this person just draw. So that's where this agent identification system comes into play here. So we have log files that are collecting lots and lots of detailed information as a person is playing. And turns out what we came up with, and I'll give you an example next, our agent identification system that we came up with turns out to be really, really accurate. So when the computer says, Val just drew a ramp, some humans looking at that will go, yeah, that's a ramp. So it's got 98% accuracy, which is really, really good. And each agent is characterized by the presence and absence of certain features. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I don't expect you to be able to see this. This is a little snapshot of a part of a log file right here. Here it is enlarged a bit. So you see, you know, a timestamp on this particular level. You see what its name is. You see that the person ended up solving the level. It took them about 149 seconds, which is a couple minutes to solve, like 2 minutes, a little more than 2 minutes to solve this particular level. And then we see this agent vector here. And what this shows us is at timestamp 61.78, the person created a springboard. Then at timestamp 98, they created another springboard, and so forth. So how in the world does the computer know that the person was drawing a springboard? So that's where this agent identification system came in. So with two different physics experts working with us across a couple different days, we spent 2 full days trying to come up with a way for the system to be able to identify what the kids were drawing. And at first we were stuck with going, oh, I think we're going to have to use computer vision. And we realized that none of us really had any expertise with computer vision. And at some point we realized, well, there's particular features, unique features for each of these agents that characterizes it. So that's what we ended up going with, and it worked really well. Here's one example for a pendulum. So there's 2 different phases to this. First is the monitor phase, or where the computer is hypothesizing that I think this person is making a pendulum. And these are the simple rules. The person's drawn an object and it has a single pin. The object's rotated about 20 degrees and it has non-zero rotational velocity. And then when something else happens, it triggers the identify phase, where if the ball has moved moderately since the monitor trigger, then the computer goes, yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is a pendulum right here. So so that's how the computer was identifying the different agents that were created by the individual players. So we have information now in our log files that's tallied in real time at the level of the level. So after a person has solved the level or quit out of a level, information is crunched immediately. So it's summed over all instances of the raw indicator data, like how much time did they spend on the level, how many number of restarts did they do, did they get a gold coin, and so forth. We also have data that's collected at the end of a session. So maybe at the end of 1 hour session playing the game, I solve 4 levels, maybe Ahmed has solved 22 different levels. So that information is tallied, is automatically scored at the end of the session. We then obtain cut scores from frequency distributions of all the raw variables. And for each one of the indicators, we created low, medium, and high levels to feed into what I mentioned earlier, which are called Bayes nets. Now, I don't expect you to be able to view this, but I wanted to communicate how we go from setting up the competency models that that I had showed earlier with the physics understanding to the Bayes nets. And it's so what we do is start off with something called a Q matrix, and You can't really see this. Well, I can zoom in a little bit. But for each one of the rows, we have all our different 154 different game levels listed. And we tell what type it is. And then we tell of the 9 different competencies, Newton's first law, second law, third law, and so forth, whether this particular level taps on it or not. So it gets a 1 or a 0 otherwise. So that provides us with information about the physics that are involved in a particular given level. So we also spell out, it's not shown here, but we spell out the different indicators for each one of the levels. We engage in evidence identification, which is the automatic scoring that I talked about. And this differs from level to level, what's being scored. Like I said, we have the cut scores from the frequency distributions. We engage in evidence accumulation, that's using the BayesNet machinery to be able to accumulate across levels. And we use Russell Allman's tools to generate the BayesNets. I'm not going to go into details in that, but I provided links, and I'll share my slides with Ahmed, who can share them with you all, because I have links in various places to things you may be interested in. So here's an example of one. This is a manipulation level and it's called Frog. And they have to do, change different sliders in order to get the ball to the balloon. And then each level, this is important, each level in the game has its own little BayesNet. And I'll show you what this one's look like. So the Frog's BayesNet focuses on a primary variable of force and motion, in particular, Newton's third law. For every action, there's a equal and opposite reaction, and the fact that energy can dissipate. And when you have the ball bouncing off things, energy is going to dissipate in time. And so for each one of these facets of the competency model, we have associated indicators, which are how many times did a person change the slider? What did they change? Did they change mass or gravity? Did they check bounciness and so forth? So what a person is doing in the solution of a problem, whether it's a manipulation level or a sketching level, is captured in the indicators. Those indicators inform the physics competencies we're interested in, and that informs their overall physics understanding. So that's kind of the mechanics of how it works. So now I think I want to shift gears a little bit. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but now, so
about
far,
15 more minutes.
Okay, that's
about 15
fine.
Minutes.
Got it. So we now can measure how well or poorly a person is doing in the game, and we can make some inferences about the physics understanding that they have at any given point in time. But we wanted to improve their physics understanding even more, and we wanted to include some learning supports in the game to help them understand the underlying physics, because there's no formal support in the game. We know from like 10, 12 different studies that just playing the game, students improve from pre-test to post-test after about 2-3 hours playing the game. That's great, but can we improve it even more? This was what I was dying to do about 4 or 5 years ago, and fortunately, I got a bunch of support, funding to do that. So one project that I'm going to tell you about today actually focuses on 2 different kinds of supports. Cognitive support, which have to do with things like, what is the physics going on in this level right here? And the other is affective support. So if a person gets really, really frustrated to the point where they just want to quit, we need to help them out. So the big problem or the big trick is to figure out a way to be able to include these kinds of helpful supports in the game without messing up the fun factor or the flow state, because the last thing I wanted was, I said, absolutely no talking heads in the game at all. We have to have some kind of game-like supports to keep this, flow state going. So we had a bunch of different physics supports available that we tested out in a bunch of usability studies. We're currently testing out a whole bunch of the affective supports right now. And we have some game-related supports, like if they're stuck in a level, they can go see worked examples, which are little 1-minute videos of an expert solution of the level. Those are kind of cheats. We have game tutorials, hints, and so forth. So I have a 2-minute video right here of just some examples of some of the supports I'll show you. Help with physics, help with the solution, and tutorials. The first is the best one, is the physics support.
Here you are going to see how to transfer energy to the ball using a lever. Gravitational potential energy, or GPE, is the energy of height. The ball begins with no height, so it has no GPE. The object has lots of height, so it has lots of GPE. Energy can change forms. The object lost GPE as it fell, but it gained kinetic energy as it sped up. Kinetic energy, or KE, is the energy of motion. Energy can transfer from one object to another. The ball gained GPE, it gained height, and it gained KE. It's now moving.
So we also had interactive definitions. I wanted this to be kind of game-like too, so it wasn't just hitting on the definition. That's really boring. I think to make sure that we have enough time for questions and answers after, I'm going to go ahead and go right to the study. And again, since Ahmed is going to be able to have these slides, you can see the rest of the video if you want. So in terms of a recent research study that we did last year, again, we've done dozens and dozens of different studies. So the one I'm going to talk about today was a study we did with about 263 9th to 11th grade students in their science classes. We did it across 6 days with about more than 4 hours of gameplay. But anyway, there was 4 different groups. There was 3 gameplay conditions where they were either randomly assigned to a linear version of the game where they had to solve levels in turn, or a non-linear version where they got to solve levels in any order they wanted to, and an adaptive condition where we used an adaptive algorithm that I've used before to be able to give them the next best level based on what their BayesNet representations were. And then we had a control condition. We used sketching and manipulations. We used the full set of all the different cognitive supports. We gave a physics pre-test and a post-test at the end to see gains in terms of their physics understanding with the inclusion of these learning supports. And we also at the end gave a survey asking about how'd you like the game and how'd you like the learning supports. So we analyzed all those data, and I'll tell you the results right now. So these are the research questions that I'm going to tell you about. I also provide a link to the paper that I'm referencing right here, so you can read the paper if you're interested. But these are the 3 research questions that I pulled out to talk about right now. So the first question is, are the stealth assessment measures reliable, valid, and fair? As a measurement and assessment person, these are really important words. So anytime you develop any kind of intervention and any kind of assessment instrument, you have to make sure that I can say I'm measuring X, but am I actually measuring that? Well, we have to validate, the measures, and we have to establish that they're reliable and so forth. The second question is, did kids actually learn physics from physics playground, and did they enjoy the game? So that's another very important question. And finally, which of the learning supports were most effective in enhancing learning and game performance? So let's dive into it. In terms of the reliability and validity, we looked at the external measures that we were using, which was our pre-test and our post-test measures, and they were very reliable, and that was very good. Next is the validity issue. So what we did, we had a significant correlation of our overall physics understanding estimate. That was what the BayesNet said was your understanding of physics at the end of gameplay. It's in terms of probability of being high, medium, or low. And does that correlate with the external measures of physics as measured by the pre-test and the post-test? And the answer is yes. Our in-game estimates based on the BayesNet were significantly correlated with the pre-test and the post-test. So that was really a good thing. I'll show you an example of what our external measure looked like here. Here's an example of 2 items on the physics test. Here you have a picture, and it says 3 blocks are placed on a scale. The yellow and red blocks have the same mass. If the lever is balanced, what's the mass of the blue block? And they have to think about that, and they go, well, it's half the distance that this is, so it would have to be twice that amount, so it would be 4 kilograms, like that. So in answer to reliability and validity, the answer is yes. The external measures are reliable, and the in-game estimates are valid measures of what we say that they're measuring, which is physics understanding. We were also able to look at a finer grain size validation. So we looked at individual facets of force and motion, linear momentum, energy, and torque with their associated counterparts on the pre-test and post-test. So the pre-test and post-test, we also characterized in terms of these facets and found significant correlations. And this is really good for diagnostic purposes. In terms of fairness, here in this country, people that go into areas like STEM and physics in particular tend to be white males. And what my goal has always been throughout this is to get more girls and persons of color interested in physics. So you can have different kinds of assessments that are biased in some manner. So we wanted to make sure that the self-assessment measures were fair. So in terms of learning by gender, we found that boys actually started out with higher incoming knowledge than girls, but at the end, by post-test, they were the same. There was no difference between males and females by the post-test. So the environment, the physics playground, was actually a very fair environment because it did succeed in elevating boys and girls, especially girls, by the end. And the same with ethnicity. By the end of the day, while there were some incoming differences by ethnicity, we saw that everyone, it was white, Black, and Hispanic populations performed the same at the end. So that was really good news as well. In terms of enjoyment, learning and enjoyment, again, students who played the game scored much higher on the post-test than the pre-test. That was nice to see yet again. And the control group showed no pre-test, post-test differences at all. In terms of enjoyment, we had a survey with a couple of questions related to how much did you enjoy the game on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 means, no, I didn't enjoy it at all, and 5 means I really enjoyed it a lot. And we saw that males and females equally enjoyed the game, and various ethnicities also equally enjoyed the game. And finally, in terms of learning supports, we saw that some of the supports that they liked most and that they used most frequently were hints like, hey, why don't you use a lever in this solution? The physics animations, which were, I showed you an example of that in a video, a partial example of that. I think that was kinetic energy, and worked examples. And in terms of dosage, students who watched more of the physics animations actually learned more physics. And they also did better in the game. They solved more levels, and this is compared to those who watched fewer physics animations. And the good news for me was that the supports did not take away from the fun. So the game is fun, you add supports and you think people will go, oh, now it's really boring, but it's not. So students who watch more physics animations actually reported higher levels of enjoyment than watching fewer, and that was significant. So I'm wrapping up now so that we have about 10 minutes, I guess, for question and answer. There's a whole bunch of current and next steps, things that we're working on. Anybody that's interested in participating, let me know. But adaptivity, we've actually, in the link to the paper that I have on one of the slides, the example that I just gave you, we tested adaptivity as one of the three different gaming conditions. Like I said, nonlinear, linear, adaptive, and control. And what we found, and this is with 263 students, that there was no differences in learning by condition. There was no advantage for adaptivity. This is about the third time I've conducted a study in different areas where I found no contribution, no value added of adaptivity. So that's something to think about. Second is the issue of student versus computer control of the supports. People like autonomy in gameplay. So we tested student versus computer controlling of learning supports. In the study I just showed you, the getting supports was voluntary. So if a kid wanted a support, they'd click on help and they'd click on the type of support they wanted. But we found that when it's optional, students don't get enough dosage. So now we're testing different computer delivery systems for it. We have one study that we're analyzing the data from now where we wanted to know whether the support should be delivered before a game level. And this is the idea being that it's an advanced organizer. So, hey, now you're going to see a level that's going to have you exercising understanding about Newton's first law or something, versus after. So an advanced organizer or after a level, and this would be after they solve a level, then they say, oh, by the way, good job, and you just solved it using something that we call Newton's second law of force of motion, F equals ma. We're testing a whole lot. We have about 10 different affective supports that we're testing right now, from music changing, motivational messages. We have a secret store that we developed that kids can go and change the ball type or change the background or change the music in the game. So these are things we're testing right now. We, and by we I mean Ahmed, has just implemented a quit prediction model into the game. This is from some of our colleagues who are in the area of educational data mining. They came up with a model. Ahmed is putting it in the game, and this is making predictions about whether somebody is about to quit a level, and if so, we want to trigger a appropriate affective support. And then we're going to be looking at behavioral versus automated triggers. And you know what? That's it. That's all I have to say right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this great presentation. I never get tired of this. So, so we have two professors here, Dr. Dariush Norouzi and Dr. Omid Norouzi. Both of them have the same family names. If you guys want to talk about something and ask a question by unmuting yourself, please go ahead and do it. Did I? All right, now it's available. You can do that. I just provided access.
Okay, am I?
Yes.
Do you have my voice?
Yes, yes.
You have my voice? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. I don't have any hard question, but one of my maybe easy question is, if the teacher should make these games, or we have to buy the games from outside. If the teacher make the games, would be okay for grading system. But if we buy or provide some games from outside of the teaching position, the games also, they have their own grading system. What we should do with that grading system?
I'm not really sure what you're asking, but one thing that I thought about while you were talking was teachers can get more invested in any kind of curricular thing, you know, that can help students learn. So say you were a science teacher and you had this game, Physics Playground, available to you. One thing that makes teachers become more invested in it is if they can create their own levels, or even assign their students to create more levels. We know that what you called grading system, I don't care for that term. I like the idea that, you know, estimates are being created. The grading sounds too black and white, you know, like I give you a D+ on understanding, you know, Newtonian physics. I like the idea of diagnostics. And I think that teacher buy-in would be good. We're not selling this game or anything. This is free to anybody that wants to use it. But the point is, it was super important at the very beginning to get to establish that these kinds of estimates that we're giving out are in fact accurate. And by accurate, we have to look at the validity. And, you know, so by establishing the validity, that the point of it was to say is, yes, when we say that you understand or don't understand the ideas about energy can dissipate, you know, that in fact that's a true statement. And that's all, these are all performance-based measures, which are so much better than, you know, memorizing stuff on a test or responding to a self-report kind of survey. So I like the idea of using games as measures because it's so much richer, the amount of information that you could get from a person. Did that make sense?
Okay, for sure, yes. Yes, it was very good. Thank you so much. That was very good.
Perfect.
I don't have any.
Dr. Omid Nourzi, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. So wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation. And so I think maybe we did not work together, but we did something together in the past. If you remember, when I was in University of Oulu, I was working with Sana Yarvale as well as Paul Krishner. And I invited you and your team to actually write a paper because I was a guest editor of Journal of Computers in Human Behavior. And you with Catherine Span, Ahmad, and also Sidney D. Mello.
Oh, some of the affective stuff. Regulation. Yeah.
Yes, about the regulation and the effect.
Yeah, that was fun.
So it was really a great contribution from you on that special issue. So it's good. So I just mentioned that to say we did something together. Okay.
We should do more together.
Yeah, definitely. And now that I want to congratulate you with the departure of your previous president. And I know you are very excited about it.
Oh, so happy.
I think not only you, but the whole board has just got rid of Trump.
I know. And since yesterday, I on social media, I put up something like, you know, please live your life in such a way that not everybody in the world is counting down every minute until you depart.
So that's good. And with that, I also congratulate Ahmad for the new faculty member position. I wish him all the success with that new challenge. So I have a question.
I didn't allow him to leave Florida though, so he could still be close. Ahmed, get over here.
It's good that he's close by anyway in Florida. So I have a question. You talked about enjoyment and you said that the students enjoyed, and okay, we understand that. But you know that when you ask students or pupils about their enjoyment, so there are always these limitations which are inherent to this self-reported data that they.
I know, but the population that we use are middle school kids, and the only people in the world who are completely honest are middle school kids. Okay. So if they don't like something, they will tell you. So we had a number of different things for the enjoyment, like, would you recommend this game to your friend? And people are very, very honest, like, oh my God, no, or, and it turns out, and I have written extensively about the problems with self-report kinds of things. But because we use multiple questions and because these kids are brutally honest, the fact that we got a 4.05 on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of enjoyment, we knew we were doing something good, because middle school students in the United States are usually grades 6, 7, and 8. So maybe ages 12, 13, 14, like that. And you all know kids that age.
Yeah. Okay.
And at least in this country, they're very not shy.
Okay, so that's what I wanted, because here sometimes when we ask these questions, so we also do additional kind of data collection, or we can link it at least to the, the learning outcomes to see to what extent they are correlated. Okay, if I'm enjoying this more, whether I also learn more or not. So that's good that you already talked about it. And my main question is whether you have actually done something with regard to collaboration and competition element in this game or in previous games, or maybe this is something interesting for you for the future.
One of my students is doing his dissertation on that topic. He's very interested in collaboration versus competition. And looking at different individual differences in relation to that too. Some people, like, I tend to be pretty competitive. I'll be collaborative, with my teammates and stuff, but put me in a game environment. I play tournaments all the time, stupid tournaments, but I love them, like Plants vs. Zombies. I'm in the highest rank of the highest level you could play. And I mean, it's just, I love it. And so some people are competitive, some people are better, but that's a huge, I haven't done it. One of my students is about to look into the issue of collaboration. We've run a bunch of studies where we've been running dyads and triads. I have a different project that I'm working on with Sydney DeMello for the last 3 years. We've been working on this, looking at collaborative problem solving. So we've been using Physics Playground, people working in groups of 3. We have a couple of papers out on that. I can share them with you if you send me an email, that are looking at what people, so we established a competency model of what is collaborative problem solving, and it involves communication and negotiation and, establishing shared knowledge and stuff like that. Some people are good at something, some teams are better than others, and what is it that individuals are doing? And we're trying to right now figure out how to give automatic feedback. And so we have a lot of fun analyzing, because they're speaking in real time, and we have their speech to text being recorded. Then we're running real-time programs on that to see what it is they're uttering. So it's really rich stuff. So we have information on how well people collaborate in the game. And we have different roles, that one person can be the controller, another person can be the recorder, and stuff like that. And then rotate those roles. But the competition, there's a whole bunch of ways that you could do that, like have a leaderboard up, say, okay, Omid, you're number 3, you've got to beat Val and Ahmed, who are way up here. And so would that make you work harder, or would that make you go, no, I'm not interested, I'm out of here? So there's a lot of things to look at there, but that's huge. That's very interesting.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Perfect.
Yes,
go ahead.
Dr. Norouzi. Another Dr. Norouzi wants to ask question, but I want to make sure that none of these Nourouzis are brother. We have a lot of Nourouzis.
3 Nourouzis. Okay, go ahead.
It's also 10:04.
Yeah, you should be mindful of time. Maybe this is the last question.
Yeah, because I had 9 to 10 in my calendar, and I have a 10:15.
Okay. Yes. We got lost in time, so go ahead.
Okay. I would like to appreciate Dr. Rahimi for inviting Professor Shute and in this webinar, and also Dr. Toufaninejad, because of lots of problem for himself, and he made this beautiful conference or webinar. And at the end, I should say, thank you so much, Dr. Shute, because you have done a great job today, and I really appreciate you. And I want to appreciate all members of Iranian Instructional Technology Association as well. Thank you so much for everyone participating in this webinar. And Dr. Norouzi is also my brother too. Don't worry about that.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
So many Nourouzis.
Nourouzis is a fantastic name.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Salam.
Salam.
Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.
Yeah, it's time to say bye.
خیلی ممنونم آقای دکتر رحیمی. Thank you Dr. Shute for your great presentation, and I think that this is not the end, just the beginning, and we like to keep this relation via Ahmed to you for further cooperations and further webinars.
ببخشید صدامو دارید شما؟ عذرخواهی میکنم جناب دکتر رحیمی.
بله ولی فکر میکنم چون دکتر شوت دارن دیگه میرن و زمانشون
من میخواستم فقط یه لحظه میخواستم صحبتی خاصی ندارم، فقط میخواستم یه ابراز علاقه بهشون بگم. Hello everybody, and especially Professor Dr. Valerie Schultz. Are you fine?
What?
Yes, are you fine? I'm very happy to meet you online, because I read your articles and books very much, because my research interest is assessment and flipped classroom learning, and I'm defending my thesis because I'm studying for PhD research at Charles University, Prague, Czech Republic. When I heard you have a webinar, I was very excited and shocked, because I read your articles and books about assessment, because my research interest, and especially my master degree thesis, was assessment and motivation. And
awesome.
Now, yes, and now my thesis, now I'm defending my PhD thesis. Okay, my thesis topic is flipped classroom learning. Flipped classroom learning.
Flipped classroom learning.
Yes, and on learners, on learners' self-efficacy and achievements in Iranian primary school. Yes, by the way, I want to.
What's the answer? Did they work?
Yes, yes, it's a comparative study. It's a comparative studies. Yes, between traditional approach and flipped classroom learning on learners' assessment, self-efficacy and academic achievements. Okay. By the way, I want to really appreciate for your opportunity and it's a webinar. Okay. And I have the best wishes for you, and especially Dr. Dariush Norouzi. Okay. It was very happy to meet Dr. Dariush Norouzi. Okay, Norouzi, from online. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nourzi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your passionate remarks.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And now we have to close the session. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.
See y'all later.
Yeah, question from here again. I really wanted, if this pandemic goes away, our committee, our Instructional System Association invited you to come in our country and have lots of workshops for Iranian students, Iranian professors and teachers, and also have lots of fun in our country because we have a beautiful country. If you can come over here, you will enjoy it. Thank you.
I would love to. And plus, Ahmed's father said that he was going to give me dinner for being for leading his dissertation defense. So
sure, multiple dinners.
I would love to come. Yeah,
I hope.
And plus, I love Iranian food because Maida, his wife, is a really good cook. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Goodbye.